I have a different way to define stories and narrative than most people. And my way to define this is I separate stories and narrative. For me, they're two different things. Although we use them interchangeably in our daily conversations, they obviously have there's an overlap. Obviously, even if you look in the dictionary, the first layer, the first level definitions are the same. Where it gets interesting is in the second level of the definition, the second layers. So to me, a story is a piece that is closed-ended. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's why when we use the core principle of storytelling in movie making or marketing, we always say, "Oh yeah, there's got to be a happy ending. There's got to be a close, right?" And then maybe we reopen another story loop later. On the contrary, narratives are open-ended. A narrative never ends. A narrative is a perspective. It's the way you look at things. It's the way you think about things. So, for instance, if here I have I'm sipping a glass of water as we're having this conversation. This glass of water is half empty, but it's also half full. Same story, two different narratives, right? So, if you apply those principles, you start realizing that narratives influence everything we do as a society. In fact, some scientists believe that it's the reason why the human species is still in existence, because we have this ability to make up stuff, to imagine things, to tell lies, to gossip, to completely twist the reality, right? When we're about to fail and almost die, we still believe and hope and imagine a world where we survive, and we actually end up surviving. Yay. So that's the power of narrative here. What we do with MetaHelm is that we look at those professional services firms, whether they are small or big. I mean, my clients range from one-person solopreneur, independent expert businesses, to about 2,000 people. And I look at these, from four different angles. Visionary leadership. I look at the leaders, how they operate, what's their narrative. Marketing, obviously, because that's the primary place where narrative has a lot of power. And then operations, how teams form, operate, and continue to grow. And then sales. And in those four areas, what I've noticed over the 30 years that I've been in consulting is that there is a bunch of narratives that get in the way. They're kind of like autopilot things, auto mode, right? How do we sell in B2B services? It's kind of a no-brainer. Oh yeah, I get on calls and then I fill out a multi-pages proposals and then I wait for the clients to call me. Like this is a really bad narrative. Don't do that. Okay, this is not how you sell properly in B2B services. So I look at this and I help those leaders defy that norm, because that norm is wrong. And they know that norm is wrong, and they come to me and they say, "Hey, we know that this isn't working for us. And maybe there are other things that we don't see that are not working for us. Can you help us look at these narratives and change them?" When I look at a narrative, that's the last, and then I'll pause because this is like kind of a quick crash course of what narrative power is. When I do this work, I look at three things. Obviously, what we say, right? And when we think about storytelling, most people will think about it as a practice that includes words. Obviously, it's communication, it's how you write, it's how you structure a story, and so on. To me, that's just a visible part of the iceberg. It's obviously what you say, but it's most importantly how you think. It's your mindset. Like the narrative, already exists, and you haven't said a thing. Even when you look at something, right? Like again, that glass that I have in my hands, I didn't say anything, and then I can already feel it, or I see it. If I'm in a bad mood or judgy mood, or I'm going to lean towards saying, it's half empty. So the mindset influences that narrative a lot. So there's a lot of research on that. In fact, therapists, so they used narrative to heal people, to get people to more balanced and productive lives through that power. So it's really a mindset piece. And then the third thing that is equally powerful is through what we do, how we behave, our systems, our procedures, our everything we have in place. So a good example for this is in my field is regulated professions, professions that have to follow certain principles, certain procedures by law, right? Like doctors or lawyers, for instance. If you go to a lawyer's or doctor's office, the narrative, like no one has talked to you yet, and you enter the waiting room, and the narrative is in full force. You don't control this place. You don't control the frame. There's probably uh, furniture that indicates stability and clout. There's probably a diploma hung on the wall, and you have to wait. And the wait room is in such a way, traditionally, is designed in such a way that we tell you when you can come and talk, and we give you a form to fill out, right? So you don't control the narrative there. It's completely controlled for you. And I noticed that in a lot of business to business professions, we don't pay attention to these things because we are not forced to do that, because we want freedom, and freedom is our worst enemy in that scenario. Right? So we don't think about these. We forget them. So my job is to make sure that the clients that I work with are conscious of this, and that they make better and more informed decisions about these narratives. I let them choose. I show them possibilities. And I always do that in alignment with who they are and who they want to be as a leader. Hence, my definition of what my value proposition is: not only your firm will work better, but also you'll love that firm. It's not like it's going to drain you, or you're going to be really, really proud of it. And if you're really, really proud of it, it's going to work even better.
And I got to see that in the project where we worked together, where we were not only helping the leader come up with the words to say, of how this project, how it ties to the longer term vision, what's going to be necessary. But we also talked about mindset.
Yep.
And what are the mindset shifts that need to happen amongst the leadership team. And then we talked about the behaviors that show that these things are true, which we now refer to as psychological safety. If the leaders show that something is true, that we actually are consistently behaving in a way that allows this thing to happen, it gives a signal to the rest of the organization to come along.
Yeah. So the project that we were working on, you had brought me on as a graphic facilitator. Graphic facilitation is the use of real-time drawings to capture, represent, illustrate conversations that are happening, so that everybody has a common definition, a common view or representation of that conversation, which increases alignment, efficiency, a feeling of being heard, and so on. So that's what we did. It's one of the many techniques that I have in my portfolio of tools. So it's very specific to that particular technique. I still use that technique today, Roger, since we're catching up on our projects in life. I still do use that technique. I don't advertise. I don't advertise for it as an independent service, as a separate service. I use that with my clients when it's necessary. The reason is I started MetaHelm with that hypothesis, with that assumption that I would lead with that, with the pen, the marker. I would be the guy who, wherever I show up, I would have a flip chart and draw things. And my narrative, my assumption was that this is great because when things are visual, it catches people's eye, captures people's attention, and that will get me in more conversations about things that I could do through consulting. So it's going to help my business. And one of the things that I realized after a year and a half or two is that it was conveying the wrong message. It was actually fueling the wrong narrative. Because there was a more powerful narrative than me that I can not change. And that narrative is that when people draw, they are the artist. It's fun. It's exciting. It makes things pop. but we don't think of these people as strategic thinkers. We think of them as putting beauty on something that is not very that's not very clear, not beautiful. So we don't have that uber narrative of drawing as a strategic tool. It has started to change. People like Dan Rome, the author of the back of the napkins, have worked really intensely in the past couple decades to change that narrative. But it's still trying. It's still like trying to move a huge cargo ship in a different direction. It takes a lot of time.
I could see how the artist is seen as reflecting a narrative, not driving the narrative.
Exactly, Roger. Yeah. So I stopped doing it because I was just getting called for to show up at the yearly retreat or come to birthday parties and Christmas parties. And I was telling people I would love to come. Sounds really fun. But that's not part of my services at the moment. So it was misinterpreted.
You had a greater power. You had more, that narrative power was something you wanted to focus on.
Exactly. It was more for me to really align what would make me work this way for a long time. So I'm a long-term strategic partner with my clients. And my clients, I work with them for 1 year, 2 years, 3 or 4 years, and sometimes even more. And I just felt like just coming once to listen and draw what people were talking about was just not me. It was not using my secret power. How do you define it, Roger?
It's either extraordinary talent or superhero power.
Thank you. My extraordinary talent or superhero. I just felt like I was not using this properly. And I thought, in fact, I started to also realize that other people would be a better fit for those clients that just wanted me to come for one-time things or just to facilitate. And so I started passing my business to other colleagues who do that better than me. So for me, it was a process of really aligning with, where I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to be doing, and the way I'm supposed to be doing it.